Good afternoon, guys. Hey, getting a little later start than I thought. Lost that extra hour last night. Messed up my whole schedule today, but hopefully everybody's having a great day. Just a beautiful day here in St. Louis today. But wanted to go through some information, especially with the Doge looking into Title 4D. We've got a lot of people spreading misinformation again, and I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just people that are unaware. So I thought now that there's so much attention being drawn to the program, it's extremely important that we educate the entire shared parenting community on exactly what is the Title 4D system, how does it work, what are the problems with it, what are the solutions, and to make sure and clarify certain information that tends to be misspread on a rampant basis. So I'm going to go through quite a bit. This is a program that's been around since 1975, and there's several people out there that are much better educated than me. It's just that I tend to have more of a following on social media, but I do want to give a lot of thanks and credit to people like Amali Olson, Ron Henry, George Piskor, Brian Ulrich, Phil Creed, Don Hubin, and I could go on and on and on. But we've got some great leaders nationally that really have some good information on this. But I did want to go through a little bit about it. The program did start in 1975, and if you take yourself back to 1975, that was sort of the end of the Beaver Cleaver days. And that was the day I remember when I was growing up. My dad was a chemical engineer. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. So if 12 years into the marriage they had gotten a divorce, it would be very hard in the short term for my mom to get back into the workforce when she's competing with kids coming out of high school and college that have more newer skills than she does. And as a result, there were a lot of it traditionally, and once again, this affects both men and women now, but I'm just saying in 1975, it primarily affected women, that if the man wasn't paying child support, the woman was ending up on welfare. And after a while, the state started saying, wait a minute, we need to come up with a system that if someone is not paying child support, we're going to recoup those welfare benefits from the person who's intentionally not paying child support. Now, what that means is that was what we call a means-tested program. So the only people that were a part of the Title 4D system, the way it was designed to be set up, was people who, if they were not receiving child support, ended up on welfare. No middle-class cases should have ever been entered into that formula. It was all based on lower income because it was part of the Social Security Act. Now, I'll cover a disclaimer later on because people always say, oh, that's your Social Security tax dollars. Guys, no, it's not your Social Security tax dollars. It has nothing to do with the Social Security Fund. That's a totally different aspect than the Social Security Act. But anyway, since it was a part of the Act, oh, Vince, appreciate you, buddy. Oh, and I see Brian on here too. But since it was a part of the Social Security Act, it was a means-tested program. And the challenge is, just like with any government programs, they start out with great intent, and then they get into what we call mission creep, where they start expanding, and then you get employees trying to justify their job, and that's what ended up happening here. There was a major expansion that was done in there were two parts to the changes, the combination of which in 1996 and 1998 basically expanded and threw every child support order in the country into the Title 4D program. So there was around, I could be wrong in the number, but Molly also would know better than me. I think it was about 19 million people were added to the child support registry at that point. Now, the big problem is that means it's no longer a means tested. That means everybody is thrown into there. And I want you to give an idea, and I'll talk a little bit about how the bonuses are calculated. There's two main parts to the bonus. Matter of fact, let me explain that first. There's two main parts to the bonus program. One is that the federal government reimburses states 2/3, so basically 67 cents on every dollar, for child support efforts, not for the dollars they collect. That's one thing people spread all the time. The state's making money every time they collect $1 of child support. 2/3 of that money goes to the state. No, it doesn't. Think of the logic of that. It doesn't go to the state, okay? The money goes to the receiving parent. So please stop spreading that rumor. If you took third grade math, you understand there's not that much money left over. So, but 2/3 of the money that the state spends, 2/3 of that money is reimbursed from the federal government. So the money the state has to spend in child support collection efforts. Now let me give you an analogy. Let's suppose that I own a restaurant. And any of you who've ever owned a business know that when you start a business, your employees make more than you do the first year. because they want a paycheck at the end of the week. The owner gets the profits at the end of the year, or at the end of the second year or third year if there are some profits. So at the end of in your first year, most business owners have to have a reserve set up to be able to pay salaries. So let's suppose you want to start a small restaurant, and to use raw numbers, and this isn't actually realistic, but let's just suppose you could afford $30,000 for employees. So you budget, you can afford 3 employees at $10,000 a year, just to be able to make the math simple. So you got $30,000 in reserve to pay employee salaries that year. You're going to pay 3 employees $10,000 a year. And your rich uncle comes into town and says, you know what? I'm going to help you get started. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pay 2/3 of all your salaries for your employees. So for every 3 employees you hire, I'm going to pay 2 of them. Are you going to stop at 3 employees there? You'd already budgeted $30,000 for the year. Most people, what they say is, man, can you imagine how much service we could have if I could use that extra money to hire extra servers? So no, you're going to hire 6. You might hire 9. Why? Because your rich uncle's paying 2/3 of it. That's what happens at the state level. So the states end up getting bloat, where they justify more salaries. And so they add on more on their time cards, and they claim that they're doing a little more so they can hire more employees to make their collection efforts look even more impressive. And then one way they game the system, I'll talk about in a second here, is this performance incentive bonus pool. So that's the first part of it. There's 2/3 of every dollar that they're reimbursed. So the state still has to pay 1/3 of those employees. But man, what a sweet deal for the state when for every employee they hire, they only have to pay 1/3 of the salary. The federal government's paying 2/3. Now, the biggest part of the program, the biggest part of the problem is this performance bonus incentive pool. And what they did, they throw in about a little over $500 million a year. It's like $600 million or something like that, give or take. They throw this into an incentive pool, and states basically fight over this money. Texas gets the most by far. There's 5 determining factors that they look at. And this is where the problems come in. There's 5 factors, and I'll go through each of the 5. The first one is the percentage of paternity establishments. Well, I have a problem with that, because that gets someone to name a father, not the right father. And paternity fraud is rampant in the shared parenting community. I know Carnell Smith wrote a whole book about that there have been studies where on contested paternity tests, there's as many as up to 30% of them that the person that they claimed was the father wasn't the father. So I have a big problem with this, and ultimately we need to get that changed to where there needs to be a DNA test to verify, is that person the right father? So number 1 is paternity establishments. And like I said, that the problem with that is it chases a father, not the right father. The second determining factor is percentage of support order establishments. Well, the problem with this is this encourages states to force a child support order even when one isn't needed. If you have 50-50 in a case, unless there's a big disparity in income, there's no need for child support. Each parent takes care of the half that they have the child. But because of this incentive pool, the formula that they use, a lot of people know that you talk to most attorneys in most states, they'll say, hey, even if I could get you 50-50, you're still going to have to pay child support. And you say, why is that? That's because of determining factor number 2 with the Title 4D incentive pool. They have to maintain a certain ratio of the total support order establishments. Number 3, the current support collection. Well, the problem with this is they get orders chasing, this is the dollars that they're collecting, this gets them chasing the middle class fathers instead of the means tested fathers. Because let me give you an example. Imagine that you're a child support worker and your boss comes to you and says, hey, I've got 2 files for you. One is a means tested program. The problem with this one is they only owe about, $300 in arrearages. They only owe about $50 a month. They've changed jobs 10 times in the last 3 years. They've changed apartments 10 times. We don't know if we can find them. And even if you can find them, they may not have any money. But file number 2, this is a computer programmer, a middle class person. They've had the same job for the last 15 years. Aside from having to move out of the family homestead and get a second home, so they're paying dual incomes at this point. They've lived in the same place, and their child support order is $800-900 a month. Which file are you going to go after? You're You're not going to the means test. It's going to take forever. You're not going to probably collect, and even if you do, you're only going to get $50. Whereas this file, you're going to get $800 a month just by slapping a garnishment on. You look like a rock star. The challenge is that was not part of the Title 4D program the way it was intended. That was not a means-tested one. So it basically becomes a wealth redistribution system at that point. The fourth determining factor, arrearage collections, the amount that you collect from, back child support. The challenge that this doesn't take into consideration is, and I forget the exact number, I don't know if Ron's on here or Phil or Brian or Molly that can put the actual statistic, but I believe it was somewhere over 80% of all arrearages are owed by people that make less than $20,000 a year. You can't get blood out of a turnip. Most of these people, the reason they have those arrearages is because they had a child support order that was imputed well above what they could possibly support. I live in St. Louis. After COVID, and with all the crime that's rampant in North City and North County in St. Louis, it's very hard for some of those fathers to have a job. If they don't have a car to try and take a bus out to the county to get a job, it's very hard. And during COVID, so many places closed up. Well, those same dads would go into court and the judge would look at them and say, hey, what are you, a slacker? Go out there and get a job. I'm going to impute your child support amount at $400 a month. Well, the challenge is there were no jobs in North City for them to be able to get a job. So arrearage collections basically forces punitive measures on people. So what they start doing in many states, they take driver's licenses away. They throw people in jail. They take their professional licenses away. Well, that's a real smart thing to do. Here's a person who needs the car to be able to go to work, and they're going to take their driver's license away. Or they need their CLD to be a trucker, and they're going to take their CLD away. Okay, so just a crazy system. And then the last one is the cost effectiveness of the entire program. And the challenge is that starts getting states focusing on the money aspect, very focused on the money aspect, instead of what are we doing to the kids? The state of Texas, many of you are aware, the state of Texas, the code actually says that orders are to be written in such a way as to maximize Title 4D funding. That's actually written in the Texas code. Huge problem, and that's why Texas gets so much. Texas gets around $80 million a year of the incentive pool money, and then they get a substantial amount of that administrative bonus that they have. So it's created problems, and some of you know I was actually there in Springfield, Illinois when we had the famous hearing. The video's gone viral. I don't know if anybody, Brian might be able to find it, but it went viral. We had a hearing several years ago in Springfield, Illinois on HB 4113, LaShawn Ford's bill. And I can still remember there was Chad Loudermilk was there, I was there, Cass Jackson, Jesse West, and I forget who else, but we were in the room, and literally the head of the Bar Association makes the statement, we're going to lose all kinds of federal funds if this 50-50 bill passes. I mean, we all knew it was true. We just couldn't believe he actually said it. And so then we also have Ron Hoskins. Ron was actually the former White House and Congressional Child Support Policy Advisor. I think it was 2016. He made the statement, the child support system is morphed into a safety net for children, into a revenue-generating machine for states. And then I forget the California child support lady who was the commissioner of child support for California made that statement too. And I don't remember the exact verbiage, but something to the effect that after a while of being child support commissioner, she soon learned that there was a way to game the system by neglecting the means-tested people and going after middle-class dads in California. Huge, huge problem. Now, I do want to make sure that we clarify as you're talking to people, we need to make sure we're giving accurate information. So I already talked about the one. Make sure do not tell people this is your Social Security tax dollars. The Social Security Act and the Social Security Fund are two totally different things. Okay? Yes, it is your tax dollars, but it's not your Social Security tax dollars. And that may not sound like a lot, but if you're talking to a legislator, you've blown all your credibility if you make the statement, this is our Social Security tax dollars. Because a legislator and a member of Congress knows the difference between the funding pools, and their attitude is, if you don't know this piece of information accurately, we can't trust you to be accurate on anything else. So it comes from a different pool of money. It does not come from the Social Security Trust Fund. Please don't say that. It's a reimbursement that states get. So it's not like the state's on the administrative cost. They're being reimbursed 2/3 of every dollar. So it's not the child support dollars. The child support dollars go to the custodial parent. Now, yes, there is a percentage. Some people say, well, there's 4% that doesn't go to them. Where's that money go? It's lost. No, the money's not lost. It's reimbursing the state for the welfare benefits that the state had paid out. So that's where that money goes. Other than that, your child support checks go straight to them. Please don't make this statement, states make $5 for every dollar collected. Okay? Once again, I wonder, how do people go to third grade and understand, okay? Guys, the states don't make $5 for every dollar of child support collected. That would not be possible. What happens, the reason that got twisted is because they claim that there's a 5-to-1 ratio for every dollar that they spend. The Title 40 program is a little over a $6 billion program, and child support collections are about $30 billion. So they try to make the statement to justify their jobs, which hopefully they're going to lose now as a result of Doge. But to justify their jobs, they're going to say, well, that's a 5-to-1 ratio. So for every dollar we spend in collection efforts, we're collecting $5 of child support. Well, that's not necessarily true. They are collecting $5 of child support for every dollar they spend on the program. The challenge is the majority of that money would have paid anyway. They wouldn't have needed the child support, the Title 40 program to collect on that amount. All they're doing is garnishing a wage or sending out a bill every month. That's not collection efforts. The state or the federal government doesn't get involved in your car payments. They don't get involved. You don't get a statement from, Washington, D.C. on your bill. No, it goes straight from you to the car loan company or you to the mortgage company. You don't need the state involved. You don't need the federal government involved. Same way with child support. We don't need the federal government involved in the Title 40 program for that. So it's not a true $5 that they collect because of their efforts. Yes, they're collecting $5, but it's not because of their efforts. I already mentioned that it's not a $34 billion program. $34 billion is the money that's collected in child support. The program itself is about a $6.5 billion program. So I want to make sure we made those corrections. Now, there's a lot of talk of Doge. Some of you know I had some meetings 2 weeks ago with Doge, with members of the White House, members of the House, members of the Senate. Yes, they are looking into now the Title 40 program, but let me clarify what they're looking for and what they're not looking for. They're not looking at individual family law cases. They're not looking to see how, my child support amount is unfair. It's twice as much as it should be. They're not looking at that at all whatsoever. They're not looking into your judge. They're not looking into any type of child parenting time issues. There's only one thing that Doge is looking into, and that's why I met with them. If you would have gone to Doge and said, I want you to look at this, it looks like, wow, this is complicated. We're going to table this and put it to the side and get to something else, and we'll come back to this in another year or two. Anytime you're dealing with the government, the simpler you can make it. You want to dumb it down to a third grade level. So when I met with them, there was one thing I wanted them to look at, and one thing only. Get it back to a means-tested program. That's a very easy thing to understand, and that eliminates over 80% of the need for the entire program. So the means tested, as I see, those are only the cases where if someone is not receiving child support, they end up on welfare. The overwhelming majority of cases are not even close to that. And I don't know what the current number is. Like I said, if Molly's watching, she might be able to give us an accurate number, but I believe it's around 20% or less are the true, not that we'll add some more if we get risk-averse cases, but the ones who are actually on welfare as a result of not receiving child support is a very small number. So I believe we could get rid of 80% of the entire program with one simple thing and roll it back to the way it was before 1996, that it's a means-tested program. And now if your ex is not on welfare, boom, you're done with the Title 40 program. That doesn't mean you don't owe child support anymore, but that means some of the games. And I'll have to do another Facebook Live because this will go into a lot more of what happens at the state level and why it causes problems. But if we eliminate Title IV at the federal level, the funding mechanism, it's going to be a lot easier at the state level to get right-size orders. Because states are doing everything they can to jack up orders and do all kinds of crazy things to maximize this Title 40 funding. we throw that mechanism out of there and states realize, oh, crud, we're breaking up families. We're not getting any money for doing this. We may as well go ahead and do the right thing. So it'll be a lot easier to change the state laws as far as child support calculations. And I'll get into another one, because one thing we really need to make sure is that all states are doing marginal costs versus per capita. And I'm not getting into a big exhortation here, but if someone has a car and now they add a child, half of the car of that child doesn't get expensed off to the child, okay? You don't charge half of the car per capita and half of the insurance per capita to the child. Yes, there's two people in that home, but the marginal cost of once you add the child, you already had the car, you already had the insurance. The only thing you're adding on is some extra gas to drive the child around the house. If you own a home and you have air conditioning and heating, the marginal cost when you bring the child in the home, yeah, especially if you have an infant, you might keep the home 2, 3, 4 degrees warmer in the wintertime than you would have kept it. But it's not per capita. It's not half of the electric bill gets added to the child support formula. It's the marginal cost of the few extra dollars of keeping the heat at a certain, a little higher than normal. So that's one big problem we have in so many states. They're using per capita instead of marginal. That's an issue for another day. And we also, someday we'll get into the Bradley Amendment and all that, the problem that causes. But right now, the only thing I want DOJ looking into is how many orders out there are true means tested one. That's why when you've seen the articles that have been out in the paper this week, they say that DOJ is looking into the incomes of people on child support. Why are they looking into that? One reason and one reason only. To determine how many of those people are making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year and should not be on that program at all. That's all they're looking at. So like I said, they're not looking at individual cases, and they're not going to dive into everybody's income. They're just looking for a dollar amount. How many of these cases, if the income in your state to start collecting a portion of welfare is $30,000, then in that state, how many of those orders make $30,000 a year or more? What percentage? And then we can figure out how many orders can we, get rid of in the total 540 system and save the government. I believe we would save about $4 billion with that one change. So yes, there's still other changes we need to do, but it's a very simple ask. And so that's why every time I meet with DOJ, my meetings with the White House, I'm asking one thing and one thing only, and that is, can we get back to a means-tested program? I'll go into some other changes. I kind of covered them at this point, but other changes we're going to make down the road. But when you're meeting with legislators, you don't want to ask for 20 things at one time. You're going to confuse them. They're going to table all of your issues. You want to make a very simple ask. And for us, we've got a very simple ask, very emphatic, very easy to show. It's just get it back to a means-tested program. That's why we don't need individual cases. Since it came up, I've been swamped with people. Hey, let me send you my case. And I had somebody send me a 20-page email. Like, you guys, I get over 800 emails a day. I literally spend about 1 minute per email. And if I did that on all of them, it would take me 18 hours. So 80% of my emails don't get answered. There's no way in all get out I could read a 20-page email, okay? At the most, if somebody sends me a 1-page email, I'll skim it. But I can't read every detail. There's no way to do that. And the government's even worse than that because they get even more emails. You've got to really dumb it down. But they're not looking at individual cases. So don't send them individual cases. All we're asking is one simple ask. Now, I'm going to go through a few things that we're going to be doing in the future because we do have some momentum now. We finally have DOJ listening. We finally have members of the U.S. House, members of the U.S. Senate. And a lot of people have been asking, hey, what can we do? How can we get involved? But the key is we make sure we get involved the right way. There have been people in the past who meant well, so I'm not in any way putting that down, very sincerely. But if you're meeting with legislators, you've got to understand, I see Seth on here that can verify that in Oregon. You've got to understand the culture of a legislator. Things that you think work on TV or things that you think would work while you're sitting around a bar with a bunch of your friends drinking are not going to work in a state capitol. There's a protocol, there's a culture, there's a system. And whether it's right or wrong, you need to work within that system. So that's why I've been doing the training classes I've been doing to try and educate people on the right ways to meet with legislators. There's a strategy that we're using. Now, a couple of things that I'm implementing coming forward, one of which we're going to have an International National Policy Council strategy session on Saturday, July 19th in Indianapolis. I did it on a Saturday this time. I know people in the past, I've done them in the middle of the week. If you're like, Mark, can't make it in the middle of the week, please do it on a weekend. Okay, so it's on a Saturday. It's going to be in Indianapolis, Saturday, July 19th. I don't know the location yet. This is going to be an invitation only. In the past, we did these public things where, oh, everybody come, everybody come, everybody come. And we had a couple times where people meant well, but people got drunk and got in a fight outside the hotel wearing one of my shirts one time. And guys, we can't have that, okay? So the other thing is we just want to make sure people are there for the right reasons. Occasionally we get people who they show up and they're not showing up to be a part of the team. They're showing up to promote their new organization or what they're doing or something like that. I'm looking for people, and we're not here to impress people. We're here to make change. So when we're in the room, check out all the baggage at the door. There's no drama. There's no arguing. We're here to make some change. For the first time since I've been doing this, we've got our foot in the door at the White House, with DOJ, with the U.S. House, with the U.S. Senate, with state after state after state after state. We are not going to blow it this time, guys. I have put too many on, and it's not just me. There's a lot of people, but I just know for myself. I've put a minimum of 30 to 40 hours. Some weeks, you guys know, that I've put in 80, 90, 100 hours a week for the last 9.5 years. We are right where we need to be right now. I'm not going to take a chance of that being blown. So this one will be an invitation only to attend. So if you're interested, send me an email. I put my email at the top of the thread, the Starnetmark@yahoo.com. Vince, I appreciate you. Yeah, Vince is going to be a big part of organizing this. We're doing, and it's the main people I'm using early on are going to be people who graduated from the class, because those people understand the culture. So the two things I'm looking at: who are the people who have either donated or subscribed to the page because they're helping to cover some of the costs of these things, and who's taken the class. Those are the people that know the right way to do it. If they've done both, then they're definitely in. But that's sort of what we're looking for. So if you're interested, send me an email. And what I'm looking for, first in the email, put Shared Parenting Indie Conference in all caps in the subject line, or I will not see it. I get way too many. So in all caps in the subject line of the email, put Shared Parenting Indie Conference in all caps. Then in the base of the email, I need the basics: your name, your address, your cell phone number. If you can, type your email address, because when I print these out, for some reason, it doesn't show the email. Even though you're Mark, I just sent you an email. I know, but a lot of times I'm old-fashioned, so I do hard copy printouts, and it won't show your email on the printout for some reason. So if you can, retype it in the message, and then type in there, hey, I'm interested in going to the Indie Conference. If you can, put 2 or 3 references within the shared parenting community, so that I have an idea of because I am going to do some vetting on this one. This one's going to be pretty important. But what we're going to do is, and I'm going to have some actual legislators there from across the country at this meeting, and we're going to be tying into a couple national policy leaders for this. So it'll be an all-day event, a roll-up-your-sleeves type thing. It's not a rah-rah. We're not looking for stories, so please don't come and try and tell your story. We already know there's a problem, okay? We don't need to hear more stories about this, because what happens is when people tell their story, one person ramps the crowd up, and then the next one wants to one-up them with an even worse story. And then, oh yeah, well, let me tell you this, and let me tell you this. And pretty soon everybody gets riled up in a frenzy. We're not looking for the frenzy. We're looking to make changes, okay? So no personal stories. Most of you know, I don't ever tell my story. Why do I not do that? Because I know myself. I get riled up when I tell it. It starts bringing all the emotions up. I can feel my heart beating faster. And I'm not at a point where I can talk logically with legislators, so I have to compartmentalize and check that at the door. So anyways, like I said, if you're interested, it'll be Saturday, July 19th in Indianapolis. More info to come down the road. We are going to be announcing part of a national project that we're going to be releasing the details on starting in May. And the official launch is going to be July 19th in Indianapolis. But we're starting some of the projects, so we are looking for some people to help out. I am going to be starting a podcast. I think we start pre-records. We've got a CBS producer from St. Louis that's fairly well known in St. Louis. It's going to be producing it. It's going to be released. I think we're doing pre-records starting next week. And I think the official thing goes live in April. And I'll be bringing some guests on, different members of Congress, different people like a Tony Perkins from Family Research Council, Grover Norquist from Americans for Tax Reform, trying to help raise awareness with different people that have a lot of influence within the Beltway. If anybody can subscribe, I know for some reason, I want to thank, I know Vince and Carl Roberts and Chris Rainbolt from Oklahoma have been pushing me for years to start the subscription thing on Facebook. I did finally do it, but for some reason they're shadow banning me. I think when you're new, they only let one a day go through, and because literally that's all it's been going through is one per day. And I get people saying, Mark, I've been trying for 4 days in a row. I can't get in. And then they'll send me a message. Believe it or not, on the 5th day, it let me in. So it's not $9.95 a day. So about the price of a large latte or something. But it helps cover some of the cost of some of the travel that I've been doing around the country. And to reward people, I do some pretty fun Facebook Lives. A lot of you guys watching this have heard a lot of this information a couple months ago. The people who were subscribers knew all the details of who I was meeting with in D.C. and what was going to happen. So it's kind of neat when they read the paper article. They're like, oh, that's exactly what Mark said was going to happen like 2 weeks ago when he had the meetings with Doge. So if you're interested, I apologize. I don't know why. It keeps telling people that there's a waiting list. There's no waiting list. So just click the subscribe button. Try it. If you can't get in, try it the next day. A couple people told me if they logged out and logged back in, it's worked. So, and then if anybody can help out with some of the expenses, because we're going to have a lot of expenses this summer for what we're going to be pulling off. This is going to be pretty cool, though. You're going to like this. This is going to help everybody in all 50 states. Oh, yeah, Paul. Yeah, if anybody can help out, at the top of the thread, and I'll say it right now, but afterwards you can go back and look. I don't know if Brian can type it in or Vince, but, oh, per month, not per day. Oh, Randall, thanks. Did I say per day? That's great. Yeah. That would really help a lot. But no, it's $9.95 per month with the subscriber. But the PayPal is starnetmark@yahoo.com. Starnetmark@yahoo.com. The Venmo is Mark-Ludwig-18. Mark-Ludwig-18. And then you'll need to put 0977 to do the. Please always do those friend to friend so they don't take those service charges out with PayPal and Venmo. And then the Zelle is 314-814-0977. So Zelle is 314-814-0977. The Venmo, Mark-Ludwig-18 with the 0977. And the PayPal, starnetmark@yahoo.com. So anyways, guys, appreciate you. I'll be doing more Facebook Lives, doing more explanations. I'll probably be doing one on the Bradley Amendment. And then I'll also do one showing at the state level. So today I covered sort of the federal macro level. And some of you say, well, if they get rid of Title 4D, does that mean child support amounts go away? That doesn't mean they go away, but there's going to be a massive change. So later this week, I'll do a Facebook Live talking about how it's going to affect, in a very positive direction for a lot of us, the state level child support collections when the state's not dependent on Big Daddy government sending in free money with Title 4D. So there's going to be a massive change at the state level, but it's going to take me another 20 to 30 minutes to explain that, and you're probably already bored listening to me. That's why it's funny that I'm going to be doing a podcast. I know without a doubt that I'm not the most exciting guy to listen to, and I'm not offended that some of you, there's a lot of you out here that can really captivate a crowd better than me. I apologize, guy, but so I'm going to try and do, like I said, later this week, I'll do one. How does this affect our child supports at the state level? So that's about it for now. Appreciate every single one of you. Don't forget, if you can, try and click the subscribe button. See if it'll let you through. If it doesn't, try several days in a row. And appreciate you, and I will talk to y'all later.